And it's just basketball. At the end of the day, it's just basketball.
Like and subscribe on the way in the door, my people. I hope you all are having a truly, truly fantastic day today. Welcome back, my people. I hope you all are having a great day today on this Monday. Shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for winning the MVP. And this marks 7 straight years of international players winning the MVP award, thus sparking the conversation on First Take about why that is, why international players seem to be outperforming the American players. And I thought Jay Williams, who's someone who I don't think he necessarily has a lot of good takes, but I thought he was pretty right on the money with the take he gave about this. So without further ado, let's check out what Jay Williams had to say about why the international players seem to be taking over.
The run of international players just doesn't speak about how great international talent is. I think it speaks more about how comfortable and complacent American players have become. Think about that for a second. Think about AAU basketball. Think about all the things that we prioritize. Highlights, mixtapes, IG reels. We much rather show people all the trick shots than actually put the time in the gym. Now, I'm not saying that speaks for every American player, but as a whole, that's where the American society is at. I had a chance to be a producer on Giannis's marvelous journey. When you get a chance to see how some international players live, how damn hungry they are, how fundamentally sound they are, and also, European basketball, players here talk about like, oh, you have to go to European. You ever know how damn physical European basketball is? You hear some of these veterans, Isaiah Thomas, some of the greatest players to play our game, applaud the NBA for allowing the level of physicality to come back into basketball, which we've seen in the playoffs. Go over and watch European basketball. Go over and watch some of the traditionally historic teams play. You get a bow when you come down the lane. You get hit in the face, you get knocked down. Ain't no other teammate coming to help you. You get your own ass up. We have prioritized the showmanship of the game, Mike, and we have lost sight of what this game is about. Now, it just doesn't. There are players who are American players that play hard. I'm not saying that, but I do believe we focus on IG and other things instead of actually mastering the damn game.
Facts, and more facts. Round of applause for Jay Williams. Even though Jay Williams, you are part of the problem too. You and mainstream media, but we'll get to that later. So first he talked about the fact that America has got complacent. The American-born players have gotten complacent. And I think this is largely in part due to something that Michael Jordan said a long time ago, and that is paying players too much money too soon. I believe this is what creates this. When they get so much money so fast, where's the incentive to keep growing? I believe that's a big part of it, and Michael Jordan said this. I believe he was on the Oprah Winfrey show when he said this. And so he was right on the money, being able to see where the NBA was headed when you give young players too much money too soon. Again, Michael Jordan didn't make some serious money until his last couple of years in the NBA. You know, Michael Jordan wasn't the highest paid for most of his career. For most of his career, during the first part of his career, Michael Jordan was making about $500,000 a year. for like the first 7 years. And it wasn't until 1993 that he started making about $4 million per year. And I feel like a lot of Michael Jordan's salary growth was due to him himself being in the NBA and growing the game the way it was. So yeah, but it wasn't until Michael Jordan's last couple of years as a Chicago Bulls, 97 and 98, that he was making over $30 million a year. So Michael Jordan saw it coming. He said, hey, when you give, well, first of all, Michael Jordan earned every penny that he got. Michael Jordan went through the struggles. Michael Jordan bettered himself each and every year. And I guess really more importantly, Michael Jordan was playing basketball because he truly loved the game of basketball. And, you know, while Michael Jordan said that, hey, when you give these players too much too soon, they're not going to have any incentive to get better. And I agree with that. But if I'm being honest, I think that more pertains to players who aren't playing just for the love of the game. Like, if you were playing for the love of the game, then the money doesn't affect your love of the game. But if you are playing for the money, if you are playing for clout and recognition, then yes, then your drive for the game is going to be stunted by having such a big reward before you've earned anything. So Jay Will brought up that. He also talked about the fact that the NBA, because of things like AAU, are focusing on the wrong thing, and that is the highlights. And you know, I've said this in many videos before. It's like the NBA now is all about the flash. And what has been sacrificed in favor of the flash is the fundamentals of the game. And this is what more of the international players have, the fundamentals of the game down, which is a shame. And so, yeah, Jay Will, again, was absolutely right about that. He said, you know, the NBA has become focused on the flash and not the fundamentals. You know, this is something that Kobe Bryant spoke on. It's how the AAU was hurting the NBA. And you know, for those very reasons mentioned, is that, you know, the AAU is not focused on the fundamentals of the game. And then one of the last things he brought up is the physicality. And, you know, he talked about how a lot of the players were praising the fact that they've allowed some more physicality in these playoffs. And again, like I said, I think me, myself included, I started off watching the playoffs because I did notice the physicality that they were allowing, and it made the game a little more exciting. Now, like I said, my excitement kind of tailed off really quickly because of the amount of threes still going up indiscriminately. But the physicality, you know, overseas is much more than what it is here in the United States. And to me, I mean, that's just a problem. It's like, you know, the place where the game has originated should be the place where the game has the most obstacles. It shouldn't be that you go overseas and the game has more obstacles in the overseas game than it does here. Because just by that format, inevitably the overseas players are going to start to overtake American players because they are playing a brand of basketball that has more obstacles. Again, I've been saying this for so long that it is the obstacles that creates greatness. And the NBA is actually doing the players a disservice by trying to make the game so soft, by trying to focus on the flash and not the substance. The NBA is doing the players and fans a disservice because they are actually preventing players from reaching their true greatness. When you take away the obstacles, you prevent players from seeing who can really overcome, who can really overcome? Who has the character and the mental fortitude to dig down deep to overcome the obstacles placed in front of them? You take that away. So again, when you are constantly looking for the next Michael Jordan, but you're constantly taking out part of the circumstances that created Michael Jordan, and that's the obstacles. Everyone knows part of what made Michael Jordan who he was going through the bad boy Pistons, was going through that physicality, was having to find a way to overcome that challenge, to toughen up mentally and physically. Obviously, Michael Jordan was great the moment he came into the league, but getting past Detroit, I think, is what made him invincible. Going through Detroit is what made Michael Jordan invincible. Going through Detroit is what made 6-0 with no Game 7s possible, because of the mental and physical calluses that had to be built up to deal with a team like Detroit. So when the NBA wants to make the game so soft because they think it's the flash that fans are drawn to the game for, they're actually doing a disservice to the players and fans, because they are preventing these players from actually reaching their potential by making the game soft, by not giving them the same obstacles to overcome. And again, you know, I think Michael Jordan, well, this happens anytime a really great player comes in. It's almost kind of the same thing that's happened with Steph Curry, right? Steph Curry is a great three-point shooter, so now everybody wants to shoot threes. Michael Jordan defied conventional wisdom, which was that you needed a dominant big man to win. But after Michael Jordan, it's like people start trying to build teams around smaller players. You got, you know, even though Kobe had Shaq at the time, but eventually Kobe without Shaq, and you had your Allen Iversons and people like that. And the focus became not the big man. The focus became the point guards and the two guards because of Michael Jordan. But the problem is there's only one Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan made it look good. You know, Michael Jordan had the flash, but Michael Jordan, again, was one of the most fundamentally sound basketball players that ever played the game. And when you hear the other players talk about him, this is one of the things that they keep bringing up. You know, they bring up how fundamentally sound he was. And this is why the game was so easy for him. So the lack of physicality is a problem. And here's the deal. If Commissioner Voldemort doesn't make a permanent reinstatement of physicality, not just during the playoffs, but during the regular season as well, the international players are inevitably going to continue to surpass U.S. players, because, again, they are playing a brand of basketball with more obstacles, which means you have to be better to play it. And this is why when they preach this bigger, stronger, faster, more skilled era, I'm like, this is false. You can't even make that statement because it's not the same game. And again, someone like a Kyrie Irving, who, you know, has great handles on the surface, you know, it's like, how great are you gonna be with hand checking and with more physicality? I can tell you right now, it won't look the same. You know, when they want to talk about someone like a Kevin Durant being the easy money sniper and all of this, you know, such a great scorer, and it's like, with physicality, that's not going to look the same. And so, yeah, like I said, if Commissioner Voldemort doesn't reinstate physicality on a permanent basis, and the overseas brand of basketball has that physicality, the gap, they're going to surpass the U.S., and the gap is just going to keep getting wider and wider until physicality is reinstated back in the game here. And last but not least, like I said, Jay Will obviously had some good points. I didn't play Stephen A's segment or Michael Wilbon, but all of them were pretty much in agreement in saying the same thing, about U.S. players getting complacent, about the lack of physicality, about the Flash and AAU ruining the game. All these things are true. But one thing that all of them failed to mention is their own part in that. And how is that? Because the mainstream media has not held these players accountable like they should. In particularly, LeBron James. The mainstream media has been more than willing to make excuses when players come up short. Again, we're mostly talking about LeBron James, but it trickles through all the players of the LeBron James generation. Now, nobody gets the amount of excuses made for them as the Duck, the leader of the 4 and 6 kingdom, but all of these players get excuses made for them. And I don't care if you're talking about James Harden or Dame Lillard or any player you can name, they all get a certain amount of excuses made for them, whether it's excuses for load managing or excuses for wanting to trade. But it's like, at what point does mainstream media hold them accountable and says, look, you should want to stick it out with your team and find a way? That's what the greats do, is play the hand that you were dealt. You should want to do that. And in the case of LeBron James, my goodness, the amount of criticism that he deserved that he didn't get is like, well, then why do you expect that these players are not growing at the same rate as players used to? Why would you expect that these players have an overcoming mentality when you're so willing to let them off the hook? When you're not really holding them accountable in mainstream media. Again, mostly talking about LeBron James because he's the face of the league, and he's the person who made okay this self-entitlement. He's the person who made okay this putting the blame on other people, putting the blame on your teammates and coaches and general managers. And, I didn't have this, and LeBron James didn't have this. LeBron James never had a great front office. LeBron James never had a teammate like Scottie Pippen. LeBron James never had a coach like Phil Jackson. Just LeBron James, poor LeBron James. This guy just didn't have anything in the NBA except to come in with a $100 million contract from Nike and poor LeBron James. And I can't help but think how different the NBA would have been if they would have chosen to make Kobe the face of the NBA instead of LeBron. Now, eventually Kobe was going to retire and somebody else would have had to take over the face of the NBA. But had they made Kobe the face of the NBA until he retired, I don't believe LeBron James would have been the next face up, because had they made Kobe the face, then the standard would have been different. So the person coming after Kobe couldn't have been LeBron James at that point, because they would have been promoting a different standard all of that time. So I think the NBA made a colossal mistake in so many ways. And I understand, the case that Kobe caught affected his perception dramatically. And I'm sure that had a big part to do with why Kobe was never the face, on top of the fact that Kobe just, especially in the beginning of his career, he just wasn't as charismatic as Michael Jordan. He didn't have that aspect of Michael Jordan's personality. It's like Michael Jordan had the killer on the court, but in front of the camera, he was very charismatic. Kobe took a while to develop that. But nonetheless, Had they made Kobe the face of the league, the NBA would have been in a different place. Again, because Kobe had standards. So them shining that spotlight on Kobe and it would have held the league to a different standard. It would have showed other players that, hey, if you want this kind of attention, if you want the perks that come with being the face of the league and being so well known, then this is the standard. But because they chose a duck, a deer, the leader of the 4 and 6 kingdom, to be the face of the league, this is where we're at now. Is at a place where the international game, again, like I said, if they don't fix things, the next 10 years, next 5 to 10 years, it's just going to get worse and worse. And it'll get to the point to where American players can't even compete with the international players. I guarantee you that. You can quote me as saying that. If they do not fix the game here and make the game harder and stop focusing on the flash and get back to the fundamentals and, bring back the physicality, if they don't do that and the international players are still playing a more physical brand of basketball before they get here, the next Michael Jordan is probably going to be from overseas. I'm certain of it. The next Michael Jordan is not going to come from the U.S. if they don't fix this game. But anyway, we're going to hold up here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander winning the MVP? What do you think of the fact that for the last 7 years, it has been international players winning the MVP? What do you think is the reason that American players have fallen behind in that regard? And do you agree with what Jay Will was saying about the lack of fundamentals, the focusing on the highlights, the complacency, and the lack of physicality? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. You all have a truly fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. All right.